Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Matt, and this is the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. And this is another Eastern European update. This is probably going to be the last one I do until the end of the league calendar for Croatia and Ukraine. I'll record another one of these at the end of the month, recapping the league, you know, who's won, who's getting European football, who's getting relegated, who's getting promoted. Uh, so look out for that. And also with the Euros coming, I was thinking about doing a short series of sort of historically themed videos that have something to do with the Euros or teams that are playing in the Euros. So I'm probably going to record one of those next week because that's the sort of in between the end of the spring semester, summer one for me, uh, which is going to be about East German football and international tournaments, right? Because there are going to be matches played in what was East Germany. One dedicated totally to Georgian football, right? Because we have Georgia in the tournament, and partially because apparently you people really enjoy these, but also Stead had mentioned it. Another kind of what if. And we're going to look at the magical Magyars, the great Hungarian teams of the 50s. And right, so look out for those. Anyway, gang, before we get started, just really quickly, I want to talk about the two leagues on the spring autumn calendar. So Kazakhstan and Belarus, and then we'll get to Croatia and Ukraine. Kazakhstan, they're on match day seven. That's just wrapped up, and it's tied on top. You have Tobol in first place on 12 points, and then tied in second is Akobi, Astana, or Nur Sultan. I think the club is officially still Astana, but the city is named after, the former dictator person. Uh, Yelme and Kairat, all on 11 points. So still early goings in that league yet. And right, they have one more match day before they take their sort of extended sort of break, and then they reconvene in June. So that's what's going on in Kazakhstan. In Belarus, they're also on match day seven. And like I said, I still don't quite understand what's going on in this league at the moment. In first place on 16 points is Slavia Maroz. Uh, they are in first via goal difference because in second is Torpedo, also on 16 points. And then in third, Dynamo Brest, tied with Neyman, but again, goal difference, so third and fourth. And then Dynamo Minsk making a little resurgence, last year's champion in fifth on 13, and they are the only team in the league that is undefeated in their last five. Now, it's been two wins and three draws. So they're still not clicking on all cylinders, but it looks like, they're getting used to life without Morozov, their big goal scorer. And they are getting goal contributions. Player to watch out for, young Nigerian kid, Nigerian under 21, by the way, Raymond Adello, uh, left winger. He has scored 4 goals in the last 3 matches. So it looks like they have found potentially their new sort of goal scorer. And again, kind of like Morozov, even though he was homegrown, he was Belarusian, a guy who maybe that they can sell to a Western European club for much needed cash. So again, we'll be revisiting and recapping the Kazakh and Belarusian leagues as the summer goes on because of their league calendars. So let's talk about the two leagues whose seasons are almost a wrap. Croatia, with 3 match days left, it's going to happen again. Dinamo Zagreb in first place with 75 points. Rijeka on 71 in second. So, the league is not done and dusted yet, but depending on results, obviously next week, we could be talking about, we could see Dinamo Zagreb win the whole thing. And then in third place, and that's that, depending on how coefficients turn out, either Europa League or Conference League spot is Hajduk Split at 61. Again, we talked about this the last time. They bottled it. And this is why you can't leave a team like Dinamo Zagreb with life. And indeed, their form of late has been outstanding, particularly their big man up front, Bruno Petkovic. 6 goals, 6 of his 11 league goals have come in the last 5 matches, which is a good thing, a great thing for Dinamo Zagreb, and also a good thing for the Croatian national team because let's be honest, he's probably going to be leading the line for Croatia at the Euros. Moving on to Ukraine, and also 3 match days left. A really important match coming up this next week. By the way, the Kazakh League, the Belarusian League, the Croatian League, and the Ukrainian League can all be found on YouTube in various forms because the leagues have their own uh, YouTube pages, and it's totally free. Uh, some have commentary, some don't. Uh, the Ukrainian Premier League, first place, Shakhtar. Second place on 67 points. Second place, Dynamo Kiev at 63 points, but with a better goal difference. Right. And Dynamo, their form has been excellent since a lot of their injured players have come back. I mean, they absolutely thrashed Kiribati 5-0 yesterday, Sunday of the weekend. So they're in really good form. These two play each other next Saturday, May the 11th at 11 a.m. Watch on YouTube, in with Ukrainian or Russian language commentary. Uh, this is a title decider, right? Because if Shakhtar win, it's donezo. If Dinamo wins, all of a sudden the last 2 weeks of the season become very, very, very interesting because they're only 1 point behind and they have the better goal difference. The match itself, right? Because obviously Shakhtar is one of those, refugee clubs, right? Their home base is quite literally in occupied territory. They've been playing matches in Kharkiv, but that's right on the front line, so they're not really doing that anymore. And sometimes in Lviv. But the bigger matches, their home matches, have been played at the Olympitsky in Kiev, as indeed this one will, which is interesting because even though there's no fans, it's essentially a home game for Dinamo. And so, stay tuned because this is a bona fide title decider. If Shakhtar win, they're going to be champions. If they slip up, if they lose, all of a sudden this becomes very interesting. Even if there's a draw, it potentially becomes interesting. So definitely something to check out. So Shakhtar and Dinamo, regardless of who win the league, have both Champions League spots wrapped up. Now, second place would go into the playoff, where if it's Dinamo, they will inevitably beat Young Boys because that always we always get Young Boys. So those two spots have been wrapped up. Third and fourth, which are the Europa League spots, uh, Kiribati, who got smacked up by Dinamo on Sunday, but have had a really good season. We're top of the table at the winter break. And right, Yuri Vantrop, my manager of the season, former Zaroya Luhansk and Sheriff Tiraspol manager, who took a 2-year hiatus so he could fight Russians with an AK-47. Right, but then he came back to management this year. My manager of the season, they're secured. They will get Europa League football next year. Third place is theirs. That fourth spot, though, that can be a little tricky. So at the moment, it's Dnipro on 48 points, but Rook, who again, talk about, this is effectively a youth academy, playing in the upper echelons, uh, on 45 points. So that last European spot can be really interesting. Looking at the bottom of the league, yeah, with 3 match days left, anything can happen. We think Alexandria, who is currently at 12 points, and that's the last guaranteed secure safe spot, should be they're at least guaranteed a playoff spot. but they can be dragged down into that. Out at 13, you have Obalon at 25, and then with the last playoff spot, Minial at 22, who I wrote them off a couple weeks ago. I apologize. But none of these teams want to win. None of these teams want safety. Metalist Kharkiv uh, in 15th at 22, and Rivas at last place, 16th at 20. But guys, there's only 5 points separating 16th to 13th. And oh, by the way, Alexandria, who's sitting there at 12th, they're also not safe too, because if Obalon gets a result, they drop points, they lose. All of a sudden, they're in the playoff conversation. Speaking of promotion and relegation, we do have one promoted team, and I'm I'm of two weird minds here. So, Kaparti Lviv, who won the Soviet Cup in the 60s, got to a cup final in the 70s, uh, perennial, sort of mid-table club throughout most of the Ukrainian Premier League's existence. They got hit and they got hit hard through financial fair play and the result of, the Russian invasion, right? So they were relegated a couple years back. They are definitely going to be coming back up. Easily the best team this season in the Pashaya Liga. And managed by club legend Myron Markovic's son. They're an historic club, right? And football. Lviv is a football crazy town, and they're the oldest show in town. In fact, they predate the Soviet era. You could kind of trace their heritage back all the way to the era when they were part of Poland in the 1920s, and maybe even still further to the Austro-Hungarian Empire days. Why I'm of two minds is because I kind of hate this team. Right. So Western Ukraine was always the least Soviet part of the old Ukrainian SSSR. This was part of the country that was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, then part of Poland. Right, you have a large Ukrainian Catholic community as opposed to most of the country being Ukrainian Orthodox. Right. And this was the heartland of sort of far right Ukrainian nationalism in the interwar and certainly during the war period. This is where the nationalist insurgency took place. And so, Vladimir Putin says a lot of nonsensical things, but there are Ukrainian Nazis. The problem are they're not in the part of the country that he invaded. But that's a story for a different day, perhaps. Anyway, in the 60s, when this club was pretty good, they won the Soviet Cup, they beat SKA Rostov in a really famous match. Right. And, they were in the Soviet Premier League and they were there for a couple of years. They had a really good team. It was eventually picked apart by the bigger Soviet Ukrainian squads, particularly Dynamo Kiev. During the 1960s, their fan base was given the name derogatorily, mainly by fans of Russian clubs, Benderatsky or Banderites, associating their fans with the interwar and wartime Ukrainian fascists, sometimes Nazi collaborators, sometimes not, Ukrainian nationalists. What did their fan base do? Well, they sort of took it as, okay, you want to call us this or that, we'll sort of embrace this. And their fans would sing, nationalist songs and home matches. They would find ways to smuggle black and red symbolism of, the UPA and the Organization for Ukrainian Nationalist stuff into the arena. But in the 60s and the 70s and even into the 80s, it was like, those of you familiar with punk rock, it was like punk rock bands fooling around with Nazi symbology. Like these fans weren't Ukrainian Nazis. but they took a stereotype that was thrown at them and they sort of embraced it and were like, okay, yeah, we'll be this kind of anti-systemic fan base and we'll monkey around with signs and symbols. Cut to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukrainian independence, and the dysfunctional mess that was Ukraine for the first, geez, for almost the entire history as an independent nation. A lot of the younger fans took on this far right Ukrainian nationalist persona and they stopped playing around and they started getting really serious. And so over the last 20 years, there have been a lot of really disgusting incidents. Uh, One in particular, just a couple years ago, where one of their fans jumped onto the pitch for the express purposes to punch Viktor Tyshankov in the face, thinking he was Jewish, by the way, even though he's born in Israel, but he was born in Israel because his dad was playing football there. Tyshankov is not Jewish, but he, I guess, went to Wikipedia and was like, Jew. So I truly despise their fans. This club is the sort of Lazio or the Rangers of Ukrainian football, but they are an historic club. And hey, there aren't going to be any fans as far as we're unless things radically change in the country in the next couple of months. There's not going to be fans in the arena, so you're not going to see any of these really ugly incidents or these demonstrations. And sometimes it's good to have what you hate close to you. Now, that's part of sports rivalries. And here's the thing, this isn't just me as a Dynamo Kiev fan saying I dislike them. Everyone in Ukraine dislikes Kaparti Lviv. So they're going to be coming up. Again, I have very, very mixed feelings about this because they are an historic club. I've been to the stadium. It's beautiful. Lviv is a football obsessed town, but their fan base has a real freaking fascist problem. Finally, we got to talk about the Ukrainian Cup, which will also be at the Olympitsky on Wednesday, the 15th of May at 12 p.m. I believe you can also see that on YouTube. And this, going back to the title decider this upcoming weekend, this Saturday, the 11th, maybe this is another thing that plays in Dynamo Kiev's favor because we got chucked out of the cup months ago. The final will be Shakhtar versus Voloska, who are currently in the Pashaya Liga. So it's possible that a first division team will win the cup. Not unprecedented, but it's not common. And right, so that will be Wednesday the 15th. Shakhtar should take care of business there, but like I said, maybe they'll be thinking about the cup because they effectively have two cup finals, two finals in the span of 5 days. So maybe that will help Dynamo on Saturday. Who knows? Anyway, gang, like I said, I'm going to record another one of these, and hopefully that will come out like the week after the Ukrainian and the Croatian league wraps. We'll be catching up with Kazakhstan and Belarus as summer goes on. And stay tuned for my little sort of Euro themed historical micro series because they're going to be coming and they'll be coming pretty soon. Anyway, gang, this is Professor Matt for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, and peace it. And oh, for those of you who are Orthodox Christian, happy Easter.